Let's move on to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Notable moves for them include they drafted O'Shea Akbaji at number 14. They drafted Isaiah Mobley at number 49 and then signed him to a two-way contract. They signed RJ Nembhard to a two-way contract. They signed a two-way, not a two-way, excuse me. They signed Robin Lopez to a one-year veteran minimum deal. Their big move so far, their second biggest move so far was they signed Ricky Rubio to a three-year deal, $18.4 million, the full mini MLE. They signed Raul Neto to a one-year veterans minimum deal, and then they signed Darius Garland to a 5-year designated rookie extension. It's worth 192.9. That can be bumped up to, I think it's 215 or 219, whatever it is, if he makes all NBA, and it becomes worth 30% of the cap. It's actually 231 million. It could be bumped up to, I believe, which that's a number you're happy to pay if he made an all NBA team. So It's just whatever it is, that's fine. Notable exits. So Colin Sexton, Ed Davis, and Rajon Rondo all remain unsigned. So they haven't exited, but Colin Sexton specifically still a restricted free agent as we record this. And then Moses Brown signed an Exhibit 10 deal with the Clippers. How did you grade the offseason from this team, sort of knowing that I would argue, I won't give you my grade, but I did sort of bake in the fact that I think they've mishandled the Colin Sexton situation, at least to date.
So that was going to be my first question to you is how do you feel about how the Sexton thing has gone? I guess I'll get to that. The Sexton thing actually didn't factor that much into my grade just because I don't know what's going to happen yet with him. I do think that the longer this goes on, and like we're way past the long end now in terms of offseason stuff, the better the chances are that they kind of retain him on a deal that makes sense for the team, as opposed to, past scenarios where we're talking about 20 million a year, or, that always seemed a little much to me. So I didn't really factor that in, and I gave them a B+, not to bury the lead. Again, working from the big to small thing. Like, I think Garland, if you think Garland has improved enough, I guess I could be receptive to that, but clearly if you're not sure, he's a little too small, or defensively, we're not sure that he's a max guy. I think offensively he's there and he's young enough to improve. And I think too, just the numbers, the stat that just, say what you want about on off swings, but the Cavs are 13.9 points per 100 worse when he's not on the floor. Like, that's a big deal. He is a vital piece. He's the only guy last year for long stretches that could sort of get the offense running. He's a good enough shooter, I think, to project as someone that really stretches the defense like a Lillard going forward. The size is an issue again, but I just think he's vital to the team. They locked him up. And then I think Rubio and Neto coming in as like your second and third stringers, even if you're not going to get a full season of Rubio, like suddenly that point guard situation, which was a real weakness behind Garland last year, is like, you're set. I think Neto is someone we both thought made sense for almost everybody as like a backup. And that's what he'll be until Rubio's back. And then he's your third guard. And that's a massive luxury. So I think they shored up the position they needed. Rubio's deal's a little rich given the injury history and the age, but I think this is a situation where clearly he really mattered to that locker room. Like, when he left, everybody was upset, and to have him back, there's just, the vibes are good. I think, we don't talk too much about that kind of thing, but I think it matters. Everything else after that, I was just kind of meh about. But yeah, I just thought they did the big thing and they hit the position they needed. And so, and I'm a softie grading this offseason. So they ended up with the B+ for me.
So I gave them a C. And I consider giving them anywhere between a C+ and a C-. So not like huge swings. The Darius Garland thing is big. And then he also doesn't have a player option, which is really good for the team when you're projecting forward. I didn't love the Rubio deal because, like you said, he's not going to be ready, and it cost you almost the entire mid-level exception. And I think that I'm most disenchanted. I was also fine with the Akbaji pick. I know a lot of people don't think that he's going to end up being a good enough shooter in the NBA to justify that pick. I think it's fine. Like, you don't need him to be a really good defender based off this team that you have. And so if he is going to hit his threes, like, you needed that from the two and the wing spots more than you needed anything else. But this Colin Sexton stuff, the 3-year, $40 million offer that's apparently on the table, you're daring this to end in him just accepting his qualifying offer, which I don't understand. And this offer right now seems very geared towards oh, as of right now, I have them, and there's probably give or take money here. They're within like $11.4 million of the luxury tax. That is very much an offer that says, hey, we're trying not to go into the tax this year. Well, then there are a few things that could have happened. Did you need to give out the Rubio deal that badly? Honestly, he's not going to be ready until at least the middle of the year. And then if you were concerned about paying the tax this year, then you shouldn't have traded for Karis LeVert. And I was an advocate that it was fine they went after LeVert. I thought people were assigning too much value to that first round pick that they owe, which they technically might not even end up paying out. If they finish this season in the lottery, it's going to convert into 2 second rounders. So I just like, what team are you? Are you a team that wants to have this more urgent timeline? Because if you do, then you can figure out how to deduct the tax later to give Sexton what would still be an offer. I imagine he'll sign that's cheaper than what you would have paid him in an extension last fall. And now you're daring him to sign his QO, it feels like, to where he'll just be an unrestricted free agent, and it becomes hard or easier to lose him for nothing at that stage. And if you just didn't want to pay Sexton, then this should have been someone that you more aggressively looked to trade even while he was injured then. And so I just don't understand that line of thinking. The Sexton thing is still very unsettled. And so maybe I'd be prepared to bump up their grade a little bit. But just like the mode of operations here just doesn't really make sense to me. And if it's because they, again, if you're going to tell me, well, they obviously prefer Karis LeVert to Colin Sexton, then what is Colin Sexton still doing on this roster?
Right.
Because like his trade value hasn't increased because in potential sign and trade scenarios right now, unless San Antonio or Indiana really want him. So you should have just moved him rather than go through this whole ordeal of, if he signs his QO and he stays, like he's going to be someone who's playing for his next contract, and is he going to work within the context of the team? I also think that he's more valuable to this team than people are giving him credit for. I think his passing, I don't want to say it's underrated, but that the criticism is exacerbated. When you're looking at someone who can make decisions in driving kicks, like, yeah, he can do it. And if you want him to take more catch and shoot volume, that's something you can work on, but he's a legitimately accurate catch and shoot 3-point marksman. That's something that this team needs. And he's more of a connective tissue to me than a Neto or even like an Okoro or even a LeVert because of what he can do off the ball. I get Rubio's value as a playmaker, his IQ, and then to the locker room, and then even his defense. This isn't a team that needs Colin Sexton to be even a B-plus defender. And I think Colin Sexton can be better on the ball moving forward. You need more offensive firepower. And as we close the season and we look at the play-in tournament, they very clearly needed more offensive lethality away from the ball, on the ball, whatever. Sexton, no, he's not going to hit those Zach LaVine type jumpers that you alluded to in the Bulls grade, but he gives you that off ball valve, that outside valve. And there's even someone who just puts like pressure on the rim. And he's always been fair, or not always, but he's become fairly decent when you look at the frequency with which he draws shooting fouls. And so I view him as an easier squeeze on this roster long-term than I do Karis LeVert. And if you're saying you like LeVert better, I think it's because you view him as the better passer, which is fine, and because he's taller. I wouldn't call him a better defender. He's certainly not a better shooter. Maybe he's a little bit better of a self-creator. So I'm just very disenchanted with the way that Cleveland has gone about this whole Colin Sexton situation. And I just don't know what you look at aside from the Garland thing this offseason and say that was a home run. Even their cheaper deals like the Rubio, I just don't know that was a home run.
I think the main difference is, I guess I'm viewing. So let me ask you first, though, if they, it doesn't seem likely, but if the Cavs were able to keep Sexton at that 3 for 40 number, how much would that bump your grade up? Would that get you to the C plus, or would that get you to the B minus?
I think I could probably go B minus or B. I would refrain from going too high on it, because it's like, what did this do with the relationship between player and team that the only reason they got here was because they really played their leverage? And that's the name of the game in restricted free agency, I suppose. So yeah, I could probably be talked into a B plus then. If he ends up signing the deal if he ends up signing a 3 or $40 million deal, I'll be flabbergasted. And yes, I will significantly change my grade. So this is largely based off that I don't think he's going to sign that contract. I don't think he should sign that contract either.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is a little bit more like the Bulls situation than I initially thought, in that like the problems are older than this offseason, right? Like I can understand liking the LeVert move. I just don't like LeVert just as a, it doesn't do it for me. I don't like what he brings. And Sexton's a little bit that way too, even though I do agree that maybe the pendulum has swung a little too far towards the negative on Sexton, because there's that stat out there that I can't remember offhand that, there aren't that many 20-point scorers that had his true shooting percentage a couple years when he was last healthy. Like but to me, to answer kind of my own question, if they got him for 3 for 40 or like even 3 for 45, I think that's what I view him as being worth, because I think not just on this team, but on most teams, almost any team that's going to do anything winning wise of consequence, I think he's your six man. I just think that's the type of player that he is. It's early, but that's just how I view him. So, like, yeah, it would have been great to have moved him, a long time ago, and maybe not done the Levert thing. And then maybe we have a big thing that can play both ends on this team, which is another thing that I didn't talk about when I was saying they addressed their needs. Like, it'd just be great if Okoro could shoot, and then like your problems are solved. I feel like he's going down the Josh Okogie route of like, man, if Okogie could ever just shoot, the Wolves would have their.
Whoa, that is like he shot pretty well on corner.
I know he's better than Okogie. Okogie's
Yeah.
like a super outlier case, but I just remember always thinking that like they have the guy if he could just make shots. Okoro's better, but I'd feel if instead of Levert, instead of Sexton, if they had just gone down different paths with each of those guys, maybe you've got the 6'7" ready to play two-way wing that just feels like needs to be there. I guess you're kind of making me think I should lower this to a flat B, but how much of a difference does that really make? I don't know.
You did talk me out of a C- for them to a flat C.
Okay, so we kind of got towards the middle there. Yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe I'm a sucker for Ricky Rubio, and it just makes me happy when he's on a team that's happy to have him.
Yeah, I mean, good for him. It's even the same thing with Joe Ingles in Milwaukee, where did they need to command the entire mini MLE, or in most of the mini MLE in Rubio's case, when he's not going to play until like he tore his ACL at the end of December, right? So is he that important? And it's also just that you did kind of, artificially lower the offer you're willing to give to Sexton. And I guess if you think Colin Sexton's a sixth man, that's fine. As the salary cap continues to go up, like the sixth man is going to cost you more than $13 million. Like, are you telling me that Colin Sexton's ceiling is Jordan Clarkson?
I don't know. He's a little. That's the first name that comes to mind, to be honest, is like he's a Clarkson type.
I can't get there. He's a better shooter, better passer. I'd say probably even better defender. I don't know. Like, if you view him as a six man, that's fine. I just still feel like if you view him as a caps lock sixth man, but if you find him less valuable to your team than Ricky Rubio, and Ricky Rubio is your sixth man, then I understand the offer. But 3 years, $40 million for a sixth man, that wouldn't be like, what do you think Tyler Hero is going to get paid in Miami to be a sixth man? So and it's different players, but like, I think Colin Sexton's ceiling is pretty significantly higher than peak Jordan Clarkson right now, who's probably like I think his biggest advantage is just he's a better perimeter shot creator or shot maker, you could say, off the dribble. Yeah. And he's not even like super efficient when he's doing that anyway. So I'm surprised. I guess I'm just higher on Colin Sexton in the consensus, and I did a podcast about that over the offseason, so that's not surprising to anyone. I don't really love the way that I think they've painted themselves into this weird corner where I don't even know how they come out of it as a winner, unless again he just signs, I guess, the 3 or $40 million offer.
I think, just to argue against myself a little bit, that I sort of balk at any team that goes with the two small guards as like, these are our starting backcourt players. So if Sexton is that guy, but if anybody's going to do it, I think the team that has Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley can get away with it. So maybe saying he's a six man for this team is a little bit unfair, because yeah, you're going to have like some point of attack problems, but your back line is so good and Mobley covers up for so many mistakes. I assume he will continue to get better and cover up for like all the mistakes, that you could get away with it. And then you do have better shooting and shot creation, even if you're undersized. But clearly the Cavs don't feel that way. Like, clearly, because $20 million a year, if that's your starting shooting guard on a team that's theoretically going to be really good, would not have been unreasonable, even with the injury. So clearly the Cavs are less convinced than certainly either of us that Sexton is like a piece for the future. So, and maybe that's a locker room thing. I don't know. You can never be too sure factoring in that type of stuff, but it is this type of situation makes it seem like there's just something beyond the on-court stuff. I don't know, just pure speculation.
That's fair. And I think the only other thing I would argue here, and it's very lightly, I don't know that I factored in my grade. It would have been Nice to see them try to more aggressively upgrade the wing spot, where if Akbaji is your biggest addition there, I don't know if that's going to cut it. Again, the market wasn't flush with all these wings, and they clearly weren't willing to spend the entire mid-level exception. So that limits them there, but they've created some of these constraints for themselves, or they had the ability, I should say, to operate outside some of them.